Boss, think about whether you want to keep working here. Me, okay, I don't. Nearly 2 years ago, I started work at company as their digital marketing person. After I started, it turned out that I was brought in to put out the fires left by my predecessor, the VP marketing, who had a team of 4 plus himself, spent over $1 million in 1 year and brought in 5 deals, 2 of them for under $10K. As you can well imagine, after a performance like that, I had lots of work to do and very little to do it with. Aside from 1 or 2 paid tools, everything else was to be done using free tools only. I'm going to do some bragging here. I beat the previous year's figures in all categories with 10% of the budget. When I started, I thought Bossman, founder, CEO, had a really good management style, saying things like, "Your successes are yours, your mistakes are mine," and "The enemy of good is great." I don't expect perfection. I want you to make sure things work and get them done. In essence, I was allowed to run my own one-man department and outsourced freelancers, and as long as I was getting results, he left me alone. Since I was the only person on the marketing team, I also had to learn a large number of skills and platforms that weren't directly related to digital marketing. Not to say everything was perfect, but things were pretty good. One of the main things that weren't perfect was that Bossman had serious anger management issues. As I said before, he left me alone, but I saw him blow up at and fire other people for stupid shit. He lost it at me too, once or twice, but he'd calm down after a couple of hours and things would be back to normal. If it looks like an abusive relationship, that's because looking back, that's exactly what it was. As the year came to an end, I approached Boss and initiated a performance review. I ran him through everything I had done in the past year, and he was pretty surprised at how much I had done with so little. I asked him for a raise, pointing out that I was currently making $8,000 a month in local currency, average is $4,500 month, when people with my, now augmented skill set were making between $14,000 month. I asked him for $12,000. He said he'd get back to me and never did. Every time I asked him about my raise, he had another excuse. After the last excuse, I began looking for something else. The other day, we had a meeting, and it turns out that 2 months ago I made a mistake. It wasn't a critical mistake, and it was rectified within a few hours of discovering the mistake. No harm or damage was caused whatsoever to company, but Bossman flipping lost it. I mean, slamming on tables, yelling for the whole office to hear, what have you. Then he said the magic words, "Pack your things up and go home. Think about whether you want to keep working here." So that's what I did, and 10 seconds later I said, "No, I don't." I started packing my shit up while he turned an even deeper shade of red and got even louder. I didn't answer him at all, just kept on packing up my things and saying goodbye to my colleagues. Turns out that being ignored really pushed his buttons, to the point where he started threatening to call security to have me removed, while I was actively removing myself and my things from the office. Here's the part where it gets beautiful. My country is very strict on employees' rights. Sorry, Americans, I feel your pain. His words and behavior are considered an improper dismissal. By law, he's required to give me 30 days' notice of dismissal, which he didn't. When he realized his mistake, he convened a pre-dismissal hearing, but it was already too late. He's opened himself up to a lawsuit, which I'm already talking with lawyers about. Because by law, he has to give me those 30 days' notice, even though he already fired me. For the next 30 days, I'm eligible for all the benefits and social rights in my salary. But I can do jack shit for him, and there's nothing he can do to me without making the incoming lawsuit 10 times worse. I've already got 4 interviews lined up for next week, paying almost double what Boss was paying me, and best of all, I'll be interviewing for other places on his dime. The cherry on top is that because I'm the only marketing person, without me, nothing happens in the marketing department for the next month, and if he doesn't hire someone on in time, I won't be around to answer any questions the new person might have. Story 2. Was forced to do a task. Got my entire chain of command fired. I've been serving in a certain military branch for 5 years, and I'm nearing the end of my contract. So the give a care is completely gone. I'm in charge of inventory of specific pieces of equipment, smaller pieces that are used by many people at my job. From time to time, these pieces disappear. Most of the time, that just means things are misplaced. But we just got out of a certain period where we had many hired contractors at our job that tend to take things. Now, every once in a while, we conduct an inventory of these pieces of equipment for accountability reasons. When we lose things, it looks very bad on my work. More specifically, bad on my bosses. So I prepared the inventory and was startled by the amount of missing pieces. I did everything I needed to do and presented the inventory to my boss. He didn't believe we had so many pieces missing and asked for me to inventory them again. So I did, got the same number, and put the inventory in his inbox. Few months go by and I get the same thing. There can't be that many. Do another one. So I'm very compliant and do it again and again and again. This gets dragged on over a year and I'm starting to notice something. My boss is about to leave soon and he is deliberately pushing this off to the next guy to cover himself. So last week I was sleeping since I work nights and I'm woken up. My boss tells me I have to do a specific survey with my coworkers that will get sent up to the head honcho. This survey allows the small guy have a voice directly to the top. I tell him that I have the night watch, but he doesn't care and demands I go and do this survey. Fine. Before the survey starts, our boss tells us we need to be completely honest, and all these surveys are anonymous. Rad. I wrote down what had been happening with the inventory and directed where they could find the documentation of the done inventories. Fast forward to yesterday. All my bosses are fired, and now I'm reporting to new people who are now fixing the issues with the inventory. Story 3. Doc pay for being late by 2 minutes? Enjoy paying massive overtime. I worked in an electricity retailer call center. It was highly unionized, but the management tracked login times to the minute. One incredibly ridiculous thing they did was if you were a minute or two late, they would literally dock your pay by that many minutes. It wasn't really enough for us to really notice, and I'm sure they didn't actually save any money. I mean, if you were 15 minutes late, I could understand not paying, but 3 minutes late? Well, eventually the union discovered what they were doing and were completely pissed that they hadn't been consulted about this dick move. This is where their MC comes in. The union demanded log-on and log-off times for everyone in the call center. What management hadn't counted on was that all of us would often need to wrap up calls and clear the call queue before the call center could officially close. This often meant that operators would leave several minutes after their shift. On bad occasions, it could be 15, 20 minutes delay before they could clock off, but mostly it was only a few minutes. The union made management recalculate everyone's pay for the year based on clock on and clock off time. They also pointed out that staying past end of shift triggered penalty rates. It turns out everyone, and I mean everyone, had spent more time wrapping up calls at the end of the day than they were late clocking on. Each of us got paid for lost wages, at overtime rates. It cost them a fortune, and they never docked the pay of anyone who was late ever again. Story 4. How to use a strict teacher's 2-strike rule to ace a test. Some years ago, by which I mean 2 or so decades roughly, my dad was at a several-day course to earn some additional qualifications for his job. On the final day, there was going to be a multiple-choice test to actually pass the seminar. On test day, everyone got settled into place, and the teacher announced that he would not go easy on cheaters. You had 1 strike to be caught trying to copy off of someone else or use a cheat sheet. But if you were caught a second time, you would be immediately thrown out and your score made invalid. Now, this teacher was very old-school strict and treating grown working people like unruly school children, and my dad does not like that very much. So my dad proceeds to take the test, and it goes pretty well. When he's through with the questions, there is just one left where he's not sure he's got it right. And he has a free strike, after all. So my dad yells out into the class, just calls out, "What's the answer to question 14? Some complete bro elsewhere in the room yells the answer back. My dad fills in the sheet, gets up, walks to the teacher's desk, presumably tries to not trip on the teacher's jaw as it lies on the floor, hands in his test, and leaves the room. To the teacher's credit, he approached my dad afterwards with some begrudging respect. I don't know if he changed his policy afterwards or the tone in which he conveyed it.